Amherst Planning Board. Can we start with roll call, please?
Shamil.
Here.
Davis. Gill.
Here.
Giuliani. Hahn.
Here.
Ed Murphy. Here. Raphael.
Okay. Start off with a couple of announcements first. Just so you know, the members of the Amherst Planning Board are all volunteers appointed by the town board. In essence, what we do is we make final decisions on site plans and subdivisions. When it comes to rezonings and comprehensive plan amendments, we make recommendations only, and then the town board has the final say over all that. For the public hearing, a couple procedures and ground rules. We have 4 items on the agenda today. With each of them, the petitioner will go first and will present to the board from the podium. The board will then ask questions of the petitioner, and then we'll ask if anyone from the general public has any comments or questions for the petitioner. What I would ask everybody is if you do have any questions or you do intend to speak, start getting in line, before the petitioner's done speaking so we can get you right up here. We'll ask the petitioners to address any questions or concerns from the public. So what I'd ask is all the questions can be address them to us, and then we'll have the petitioner address those afterwards. There is a laser pointer at the podium for hearing during our hearings. If you're going to use the laser pointer, please refer to that screen over on my right, your left. In terms of time limits, the petitioner will have 15 minutes to speak, and the neighborhood or community spokesperson, who we'll define as the first person from the general public to speak, will also have 15 minutes. Anyone else from the public speaking after the community spokesperson, 3 minutes. And one final thing is, in the likely event there's an emergency, I would ask everybody to use these exits over here to your right and proceed in that direction. Don't come back this way. That doesn't lead to anywhere good. So, okay. With that, let's move on to, let's start with item number 1, 2495 Worley Drive. Speaker for that? Okay, I don't see a speaker for 2495 Worley Drive. Is there anybody here with any questions or concerns to the board? You won't be able to get anything from the petitioner on that. Okay, I will close the hearing. Let's move on to item number 2. This is 4300 Millersport Highway. Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Board. Sean Hopkins of the law firm of Hopkins, Storgy & McCarthy. On behalf of the applicant, also with me is Pat Bitar, the project engineer from William Shutt & Associates. So this is a project you've seen before, and what's currently on the overhead is a site plan that was approved on February 21st of 2023. And there's a couple parts that are important here. Number 1, this site was zoned TND, Traditional Neighborhood Development, by the town board, it's almost 2 decades ago now, in connection with what was proposed at that point, a large Walmart supercenter that ultimately ended up going on Sheridan and Bailey, which is probably a more appropriate location. The plan that you approved on February 21st of 2023 showed wetlands of approximately 31.71 acres. We're proposing a wetland impact at that time, slightly more than 3/4 of an acre. And what we were proposing at that time here, which one should I shine, does it matter? What we were proposing on what we called then phase 1 was 38 patio homes, 7 townhome buildings consisting of 4 units each, and 6 townhome buildings consisting of 2 units. We also showed these future mixed-use buildings, which we're not seeking site plan approval. And then at the request of the town at that point, we were showing this future development area for possibly some agricultural park or something, which never came to fruition. So that's where we were then on February 21st of 2023. Next slide. Ultimately, we were required to obtain an updated jurisdictional determination from the Army Corps of Engineers, even though we had a valid JD that was based on additional information submitted by a nearby property owner. So that occurred. And earlier this year on January 18th, we obtained a new JD. Ultimately, the wetlands on site did expand to 34.84 acres. We worked closely with our wetland consultant and made an effort to try and minimize impacts to those on-site wetlands, which we'll show you in a second. Next slide. So this is the current plan. It's important to note the density that we're now proposing on this part, which was phase 1, and phase 2, which again was previously possibly a future agricultural business park, is exactly the same. There's absolutely no increase in the density. We've simply taken what was on phase 1 and spread it out. Why did we do that? We did it in connection with an effort to minimize wetland impacts to the maximum extent practicable based on input from our wetland consultant and the Army Corps of Engineers. So we're now down to 0.39 acres of wetland impacts, and we're proposing to create 0.58 acres of wetlands on site. We have filed a joint application with the DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers on February 2nd of this year based on the current plan. Next slide. What else is new is we've finalized our out-of-district sewer agreement with the town board. That was approved by the town board. I've mentioned the fact that while we're showing these future mixed-use buildings, we're not seeking site plan approval. DOT did approve an access onto Millersport Highway in August of 2023. In fact, they went so far as to say your highway work permit is ready. All you have to do is provide the proof of insurance. And believe it or not, my client, Mr. Samato, actually has that work scheduled to put a turn lane on Millersport Highway. Lo and behold, that has changed a little bit. But access onto Millersport Highway is still essential, and I think everyone can understand why. Without it, these future mixed-use buildings really can't occur. They won't be viable in terms of including any commercial space. It is important to note that this project has been reviewed and approved by numerous town departments and committees over the course of the past couple months. Next slide. So this is the email that I mentioned that came from DOT on August 2nd, it should be 2023, basically stating that yes, we're going to allow your access onto Millersport Highway, and in fact your highway work permit is ready, again subject to you providing proof of insurance and actually pulling the actual permit. Next slide. Well, can you go back 2 slides, James? So what happened is we received an email, Mr. Palumbo was kind enough to forward it to us late yesterday, from DOT, and DOT said, based on its review of the current plan, as of yesterday, they're no longer interested in us having access onto Millersport Highway. We did speak to DOT today, and there's some possible alternatives, possibly right in, right out, or right in, left in, right out. So we're going to have those additional discussions. So I do want to note, and I believe it was mentioned during your work session meeting, we're not asking for a decision. And again, we had no time to respond to that because Gary only received that email late yesterday. Now go to the next slide. These are elevations, conceptual elevations. Those would be the 2-unit buildings. Next slide. And those would be the 4-unit buildings. Next slide. So it is quite clear that this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned, this site was downzoned from shopping center to TND by the town board in order to stop a Walmart project that was then proposed. I believe it's the first project, at least the first project out in this area, that's zoned TND to come in front of you. And if you look at the text in the comprehensive plan, this is designated as an area that's appropriate for mixed-use development. One of the topics that was discussed during the work session was the setbacks of the buildings. As was mentioned, we did receive setback variances. Strangely, the TND zoning only allows a setback of 6 feet, meaning under strict compliance, every single building would have to be 6 feet within the right-of-way. Next slide. In terms of seeker, it's important to note we did receive a no impact letter from SHPO on July 27th of 2022. There is a small, James, can you go up a little bit? I don't know if you, on this, can you get that so we can see the whole? There you go. There is this small area that does have some archaeological resources that we have indicated will be permanently protected. So we're leaving that alone. We're not going to impact any artifacts or resources that may or may not be in that area. Next slide. Traffic. So in terms of traffic, we are proposing a public road. As indicated in the comment letter that was submitted to the town by Patricia Bitar, my client, the applicant, is not proposing to utilize condominium status. We are not proposing lot lines. These will be units that will be for sale, though. These are not for lease. Obviously, it will generate very substantial property taxes compared to what's there today. We did update the traffic impact study on April 18th of this year, and basically the conclusions of that traffic impact study were all the intersections in the study area, including Millersport and our internal access, will operate at level of service B, and with the exception of that turn lane, a right turn lane in with a length of 325 feet, no additional improvements are necessary. And again, we're going to have additional discussions with DOT relative to access onto Millersport Highway. Next slide. It's also important to note that, again, I mentioned we have approvals from a wide assortment of town departments and committees. They're all referenced there. Fire chiefs, building department, engineering department, highway department, assessor's office, plumbing division, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those reviews have been updated, and we have current reviews by all those departments approving the project. Next slide. So what we were originally requesting prior to getting that email late yesterday was the issuance of a negative declaration and approval of the site plan. However, in light of the fact we have some additional input from DOT that we need time to address, working with our project engineer, our traffic engineering firm, Passero Associates, what we're asking this evening is keep the hearing open because there may be some new evidence to present. And then, of course, Pat and I would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. All right, questions from the board. Brittany?
Sidewalks would be on both sides of the proposed road?
Sidewalks are on both sides of the proposed internal public road, yes.
And then the applicant is seeking sidewalk waivers from what roads?
Smith Road, New Road, and Millersport Highway frontage. And the reason for that is those sidewalks simply don't connect anywhere. I don't think that's safe in terms of encouraging pedestrian access. And as the board is well aware, if sidewalks are ever installed in a larger geographic area on any of those streets in the future, the granting of a sidewalk waiver does not preclude the town board from doing that.
So it sounds like the applicant would be willing at the town's request to install them at a later date if it was so desired?
Absolutely.
Those are all the questions I have.
Herb?
No questions.
Joe?
No questions.
Carrie?
No.
I guess the only question I would have, Mr. Hopkins, is I know they're seeking a public road to go through this. Is there any possibility, any consideration of a private road? Or is that something of a deal breaker?
Can we go back to the site plan, James? There you go. So what we're proposing is public road, and then again, connection to Millersport. Our preference is a public road. We think there are some benefits associated with that. And again, this project's going to generate very substantial taxes. In the past, when I've proposed private roads in connection with projects, there's always a concern because the concern that immediately comes up is then you're going to have condominium form of ownership, ultimately pursuant to state law, and I'm not saying I agree with it, the homeowners would then get a tax break. So we think it's more appropriate to install a public road. It's also important to note that at some point in the future, while we think it's a ministerial decision, the town board will have to decide whether or not to accept that road.
Okay.
I also did hear a discussion during the work session that there possibly could be some changes to the subdivision regulations. Those subdivision regulations have not even been released yet, so it would be impossible for us to direct Pat Bitar and her team at William Schutz to design something that doesn't exist.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Why is it more beneficial for the town to take over this particular road, knowing that the road is only benefiting this HOA?
Because if it's private roadway, for sure it will be a condominium association. The condo owners are entitled to a tax break under New York state law.
So your intention is you would just switch the intent to it being condos then?
No, what we've said is my client has no intention to develop it as condos. And keep in mind, my client is ultimately the builder of the roads, installer of the infrastructure, not the home builder. But I believe they've made clear to the parties they've spoken to, hey, if we're proposing a public road, it should not utilize the condominium form of ownership.
But then you're asking the town to maintain that road in perpetuity.
Right, yeah.
Which seems to only benefit that particular HOA.
Well, I mean, we have many roads in Amherst that are public. I live on a cul-de-sac. I mean, that would be true of hundreds of roads if that's the reasoning that you apply. Right, by definition. This at least does connect through. And again, we want to have access onto Millersport as well.
But you don't have that yet.
Well, we did until yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, we actually have a permit. So right, that's got to be discussed.
So even more reason now, if you don't have donor support, it seems more like a private road.
Well, again, our request is that you're going to leave the hearing open, so let us have those additional discussions with DOT.
All right, is there anybody from the general public that wishes to speak?
Hello? Perfect. Oh, maybe not perfect.
What's your name and address, sir?
Yep, my name is Jonathan Rich. I live at 210 Smith Road, which is the property that adjoins directly to the west of 4300 Millersport. We were here last year. At the time, the room was pretty packed. We had a petition of a couple hundred signatures. Today, I think it's pretty much only me. You know, we reached out to the Army Corps after this project was approved because we felt that the wetlands were not accurately portrayed in the additional delineation. As a result, a couple things happened. You know, one of the ways you can identify wetlands is through the vegetation on the property. And so, of course, that next spring, the property owner went through and removed as much wetland vegetation as they could. They subsequently had a new delineation done, and then after that delineation, when the Army Corps visited the site, they couldn't make a determination of wetlands based on vegetation because there was no vegetation to see. Additionally, the new drainage pattern on the property has been changed such that there is actually two tributaries. So Stream A, which is this one that runs behind their future phase 2. Am I getting too far away? Oh, sorry. Thanks. So I don't know if you can pull up the drainage map, but there's a tributary that runs this way across the property, and there's another tributary that runs right here across the property. So those, I don't know if that's been part of the wetland assessment. So those tributaries, for one of them is a seasonal tributary, the other is actually a permanent fixture. It's a Class C waterway, and as part of their permit application, there's certain restrictions that they have to adhere to with regards to that Class C waterway. I sent you guys a nice little letter last night. I hope you all had a chance to read it multiple times. But the big idea here is that this project is being rushed, right? We can see with the DOT letter, we can see with some of the things that are taking place, and one of the concerns that we have is there's been a lot of changes to Smith Road and New Road. There's another $6.7 million of investment into the drainage on those roads and actually widening New Road that's going to be happening, I believe, this summer. A lot of the data that backs their engineering reports, their traffic reports, is 5 to 10 years old. And in fact, I believe the SWIP data is almost 10 years old. I'd have to double check. But since then, the county's come in, they've actually redone the drainage on Smith Road. So the water does no longer drains easterly on Smith. It actually drains to the west, and it actually drains all the way out to Ransom Creek. There's some erosion issues taking place as a result of that new drainage. Sean mentioned the traffic study stuff. The biggest concern I've seen from residents on Smith, and I haven't talked to too many people on New, is obviously, you know, these roads get a relatively good amount of traffic, and if you create a connection between the two, you're going to see a lot of people trying to avoid those two lights. Just Monday, we had a pretty severe accident at Smith and Millersport, and I believe their study identified that even though Smith and New aren't too bad, Smith and Millersport and the 990 are very high incidence of accidents. What else have we got here? Yeah, so I mentioned the drainage. Sewers, again, their sewer data is, I believe, 6 years old now. Since then, we've had a couple hundred housing units to the system as part of North Amherst, so I'm concerned about overage there. And then finally, you know, and I didn't discover this until yesterday, I'd been speaking with Sean and I didn't realize it. The permit they're applying for through the Army Corps, it was called a nationwide permit, Permit 29. There's special requirements at the state level and actually at the district level in Buffalo for that permit. And one of the restrictions is that permit cannot be applied to a property that's in a 100-year floodplain, which this property is in. I've been in contact with the DEC, I've been in contact with the Army Corps. We're kind of going back and forth, but there's a nationwide permit application, but there's also much more restrictive rules at the state and district level. So I didn't have a chance to share that with Sean yet. I plan to. And then obviously, I think in my letter, I kind of outlined some areas where the the EAF was either incomplete or inaccurate. But yeah, I mean, we've been here before. I have been working with Sean on behalf of the property owner. I think that we're working towards a resolution that fits the community. But obviously, the biggest issues are the drainage issues and the traffic issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, I'll close the hearing on that. I'm sorry. I'm not closing the hearing. I will, yeah, let me make a quick motion here. Motion to reopen the hearing. I'm not sure I had the power to close it all by myself, but either way, motion to reopen the hearing?
I would be moving to reopen the hearing.
Okay. Second, roll call, please. Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Murphy? Yes. Raphael?
Yeah,
First, Pat wants to address one thing, but first of all, I thought it was my understanding you were going to leave the hearing open.
we just did. We're doing it.
And I think Pat just wants to respond to some of the comments relative to engineering.
Patricia Bitar with William Shutt Associates. And as far as the drainage, we've done a comprehensive drainage analysis that is current. It's based on current data that we've obtained. It's based on current New York State DEC regs. It's based on current rainfall data and current Town of Amherst design recommendations. So everything we've done has been updated per this most recent layout. Nothing is 15 years old. I don't understand that reference. We've done everything up to date, been submitted. It's been reviewed by the town engineering departments. We've gone back and forth and addressed some additional comments. But everything is current per current design standards. The topographic survey was done. I don't remember the exact date of that, but the actual topography of our piece of property has not been altered. There's been no land activities that have altered the topography. So that is still from the original topographic survey, but everything we've done calculation-wise is current. And additionally, for the downstream capacity analysis for wastewater, we have obtained current data. I don't know the exact date, but we've updated that downstream capacity analysis several times and gone back and forth with the town and the DEC in that regard to make sure that it is up to date. And the wastewater we're adding to that system has been analyzed under current numbers. So I don't remember the exact date of the latest response from the DEC, but I believe it was in 2023. So nothing is 6 years old as well. Everything's been brought up to date to the current information we've had made available to us.
Thank you.
And I just want to note, Mr. Rich, the previous speaker, we did, Gary provided me with a copy of his submission to the planning board during the work session. So we'll take a look at that. It's pretty comprehensive. We have not had the opportunity to read that in detail, and we'll be prepared to address that during next month's hearing. And I also want to note, as Mr. Rich indicated, we've been in discussions, and we'll continue those discussions. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Okay, we'll keep that open, and then we'll now move on to number 3. Okay, this is 6812, 6814. I'm sorry. That's fine. It's okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm Ashley Rich. I'm at 210 Smith Road, same as Jonathan Rich. With all of this, with the topographic surveys and everything, are you taking into consideration the solar farm that's going in behind into your engineering plans? Because I don't see anything that reflects that in the plans. And as you push more water towards everything, because I know that there was more dirt added to the plan for the solar farm, you're going to be increasing the height, pushing the water more our way, which means it's going to impact this area, and it's also going to impact the neighbors around there. So I was just wondering if that could be addressed, or even a thought of concern. As it is, we've spent a lot of money getting out of the floodplain, so we wouldn't have to pay flood insurance. And it just seems like we're going to wind up putting ourselves back in there with all of these plans. So that's something I would like to be taken into consideration, please.
Mr. Hopkins, would you like to address?
Sean Hopkins again. Yeah, in terms of the solar project that's going to be constructed nearby, there's no relationship between the projects. I don't think there's any overlap in terms of technical considerations. We'll take a look at it. We're providing an on-site stormwater management system for this site that complies with the current DEC stringent stormwater quality and quantity standards, meaning Pat and her team, as reviewed by the engineering department, have designed this so it will adequately handle a 100-year storm event.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the general public with regard to item number 2? Nobody? Okay, now we'll move on to number 3. Keeping that open, we'll keep on to number 3. This is 6812, 6814, 6832 Main Street, and 29 and 37 Tennyson Terrace. Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 6812 Main Street LLC. Also with me is Paul Bliss and Joe Ditto, as well as Pat Sheedy, the project engineer from Carmina Wood Design. This is actually a site you've seen earlier in the year in connection with the request for a restricted use permit that was ultimately granted by the ZBA. So the site in question this evening is highlighted in blue and consists of 5 separate parcels, 6812, 6814, and 6832 Main Street, as well as 29 and 37 Tennyson Terrace. It has a size of 2.2 acres. It's right in the middle of 2 projects that Mr. Bliss is involved with. First, the 2 mixed-use buildings at 6770 and 6790 Main Street, just to acclimate everyone, Tennyson, Main Street, Transit Road. And then what's highlighted in yellow is the mixed-use project that's under construction that previously received site plan approval from this board at 6842 Main Street, which is behind what I still call the Fridays Plaza, even though that long ago exited and it's now a Mexican restaurant. Next slide. Just to zoom in, and keep in mind, I'll show you this in a second, this is the existing plaza that's located along the Main Street frontage. That's a photograph looking to the east towards Transit Road. One important thing to note with respect to this plaza is basically nothing complies with the code in terms of where the parking is located, green space, et cetera, et cetera. This parcel is, Mr. Bliss has had interest in this parcel for several years, and ultimately the property owner, a longtime property owner, contacted him, and we closed on the purchase of this site last fall. Next slide. This is a survey showing where the existing building is. Next slide. So this has been reviewed 3 separate times by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and during its December 19th, 2023 meeting, they asked for consideration of what's the northernmost parcel, 37 Tennyson, that currently has a single-family home and a width of 90 feet, for that to remain permanent green space, so to provide an adequate buffer on Tennyson. So we did record a declaration of restrictions on March 28th of 2024. That parcel, the northernmost parcel, 37 Tennyson, will be permanent green space, meaning no driveways, no houses, no multifamily buildings, et cetera, et cetera. At one point, there were some discussions with the town about the possibility of that being a pocket park. We'd still be willing to entertain those discussions going forward. Next slide. There's a copy of the site plan just to acclimate everyone again. Tennyson, Main, Transit would be over here. In yellow, you can see the footprint of the proposed mixed-use building, which will have a height of 4 and 5 stories, 15,000 square feet of first-floor commercial space, and 34 upper-story apartments. We're showing 2 driveway connections onto Tennyson. You will note they don't quite align, but in terms of their proximity, that was discussed during the Traffic Safety Board meeting that I attended on May 1st, and ultimately they were okay with those locations. We're showing 117 parking spaces, including 2 garages, which are located here. We're also showing stormwater management area on the back of, or on 29 Tennyson Terrace. And as indicated, this project obviously does require site plan approval from this board. I do want to note 2 other things. Number 1, along the edge of 37 Tennyson, that permanent open space, we are showing what's called high-impact screening pursuant to your code, a 6-foot fence with landscaping. And then in order to promote connectivity between this site and the adjacent mixed-use building under construction, we're showing an internal driveway connection. A concern has been raised previously about that resulting in problematic traffic impacts, but I would remind the board of a couple things. Number 1, if you did use that to cut through, and it's somewhat circuitous, onto Tennyson, you'd go up all the way to Tennyson, come out to Transit, and then you have to turn right. So you'd literally end up at the exact same location as if you left the mixed-use building through the M&T parcel, which we have at easement, and turned right onto Transit heading south. That project also has its own separate driveway connection to Main Street. And obviously, we're very familiar with the town DOT's policy of limiting curb cuts onto Main Street, similar to the mixed-use buildings at 6770 and 6790 Main Street. We've deliberately shown a building along the frontage with parking in the rear. During the work session, one of the questions that came up was the covered walkway. There is a requirement in the zoning code to provide a covered walkway or a designated percentage of awnings. And it's important to note that this building, the primary access is on the rear, not the front. Obviously, you can see the parking here. And if you look at Mr. Bliss's other buildings, they do include canopies and decorative features, but not what I would call that old school covered walkway, for example, that you'd see at the Georgetown Plaza on Evans and Sheridan. Next slide. Copy of the landscaping plan. As always, we're planting very extensive landscaping, 71 trees, 12 different types, 253 shrubs, 8 different types, and 43 bushes. That landscape plan has been reviewed and approved by the town's landscape architect. Next slide. Lighting plan, it's important to note this will be dark sky compliant, no lighting spillover whatsoever onto adjacent properties. Next slide. It's the south elevation plan, so this is what would face Main Street. Next slide. North elevation plan facing the back. One of the nice things of this building, Mr. Bliss's other buildings in nearby vicinity, is four-sided architecture, meaning there's not just a focus on the front side along Main Street. These buildings have been designed at great expense, so they look nice from all four sides. Next slide. And there you can see finally the east and the west elevations. Next slide. This is a color rendering looking to the east towards Transit Road. And that's a color rendering looking back the other way. It is important to note Dave Sutton, our architect, just walked in. So if you have any questions relative to the architecture, these buildings as designed reflect his input. Next slide. I think there was one. Was that it? Okay, there we go. So this has also been reviewed and approved by all the relevant town departments and committees over the course of the past couple months, including the Fire Chiefs Association, most recently yesterday. It is important to note that this building will be sprinkled and will provide safe access for the fire department, located directly across the street. Engineering department, the SWIP and sewer, traffic safety board, the building department, plumbing division, and the building department. So we do think you're in a position with respect to this project that you could approve the site plan. Next slide. In terms of seeker, it's an unlisted action. The planning department did issue a lead agency solicitation letter on March 27th. We did provide the planning department with a no impact determination letter issued by SHPO on March 11th of this year. The project's been designed again to comply with the technical standards for stormwater quality and quantity, as evidenced by the design plans prepared by Pat Sheedy and his team, and more importantly, the review by the engineering department. So we think it's quite clear this mixed-use redevelopment project that will replace an outdated, non-conforming plaza with a mixed-use building per the comprehensive plan clearly will not result in any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. So with all that being said, what we're asking you to consider this evening is issuing a negative declaration and approving the site plan subject to appropriate conditions. If there's any questions, either myself or the members of the project team that are present would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
All right, questions from the board for Mr. Hopkins or the team? Brittany?
Thought to some type of color this parcel, like right next door, not so on that particular area.
Building material, you mean building colors?
Colors. It just seems very like cement and.
Yeah, I think Mr. Bliss would say he likes the consistency, and you can see there's a lot of use of that simulated wood, diverse materials. Overall, those two buildings at 6770 and 6790 have received very favorable reviews in terms of the architecture.
Yeah, except for since expanding it so far seems ugly on Main Street.
Yeah, okay. Harp?
No question.
Joe?
No question.
Carrie? I have no questions. Okay. I take it, ma'am, you are, can I have you go to the podium, please? Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. And just one more time, your name and address, ma'am.
Yes, it's Kathleen Miscue, 64 Tennyson Terrace. I've lived there for 44 years now. We used to have a big sign on Main Street, just as you came to Tennyson, that said, Tree City USA. I guess the sign's gone, and I guess we're not Tree City USA anymore. I know there's certain things you have to qualify for that. I don't know if a lot of the things that have happened to our neighborhood influence that at all. Definitely, our property values have been lowered with this huge building that he put up on backland. It used to be that the character of the neighborhood was you came down the street and you thought you were in the country. Small houses with woods behind it. But if you drove out, it's location, location, location. 4/10 of a mile from my driveway is Main and Transit. It was like I was in the city. It was like within a mile I could get anything I wanted. Now, what he's proposing, I guess I'm getting a skyscraper in my city. And so I did hand you a copy of the petition that I passed out in my neighborhood. I only had one person say no, and they were only worried because what we're mostly, that was talking about was, let me turn this thing on, this driveway here from the backland down. He told us when we met with Mr. Bliss, we met with him in his office, I had two questions for him. One was about the woods that was behind the houses. He said he was going to leave it. Well, he came so close tearing it down, he even took some private property, bushes and trees down. Secondly, I asked him, how are you going to get in and out of there? He said, Main Street and Transit Road. I said, you're not coming on Tennyson. No, he told me he was not coming on Tennyson. It was going to be Main Street by the plaza with Citizens Bank, what he calls the Fridays Plaza, and Transit by M&T Bank. The petition I had before you, I think Mr. Bliss has a voodoo doll with my name on it because I was going to take it out last week and I got COVID. So this week I didn't have a whole lot of time to get everybody in the neighborhood, but everyone else I asked. And they also agree with Brittany that most of the complaints were they're ugly buildings. So I know my people aren't on the street about that. The parking access, now those two driveways, 4 driveways, don't, I guess, commingle. Like, there must be a little offset, which maybe isn't a bad thing. The ones that come from the 6770 building and then the new proposed one where the ugly plaza is, according to them. So those will be a little offset. I don't have a problem with that. The people on the other side, unfortunately, I live on the even side. The people who live on the odd side, who've had other woods taken down behind the house, now have 4 stories of apartments looking down in their yards. We have the lighting from the buildings at 6770 and 6790 light up so far. My neighbor who was here and can attest to this, at 56, her entire yard is lit up from that. When I go out at night, that's all I see is those LED lights. And this is going to be at the building at, I'm not sure quite of the number because it seems to keep changing, 6832 or 6842 Main Street. And the plaza numbers don't seem to go because the actual plaza is 6010 through 6016, and then where Citizens Bank is 6050. So 5 stories of apartments with mixed use, people coming in and out, two cars for each apartment, plus place for visitors, retail employees coming in and out, retail customers coming in and out. It just seems like it's way too much for that area. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, we also have no sidewalks. So all these extra cars coming off on that little dump spot there, that little apostrophe up there, we need to worry about that because, in fact, from Mr. Bliss's building, people walk up and down our street all the time with their dogs. And it's our, I measured our shoulder of the road and it's not even 2 feet wide. It's not wide enough for me, so it's certainly not wide enough for like 2 people walking together, plus this extra traffic, that if you're driving down the street and someone's walking on the road, you actually cross the double yellow line that we have on our street that was supposed to slow cars down because they just go so fast on our street that after they measured it years ago and said, at that time, we got 60 cars an hour coming down our street, and they certainly aren't going 30 miles an hour. They're going a lot faster than that. So we need to worry about the public safety for people walking on a street that has no sidewalks. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, you know what, I guess I will ask you a question. I know it's not, I recognize it's not your only concern
Right.
about the building, but the one that did get brought up was the possibility of the still under construction Bliss building with of them cutting through and then making a
Yeah,
right on it.
except he already started making a curb there.
Well, I guess what I'm asking you, ma'am, is the concern that was communicated to us was that there was a worry that people from the still under construction building
Yes.
would cut into the new parking lot
Yes.
and then make a right onto Tennyson.
Right.
And it was explained that, you know, if they wanted to get to transit, they could just go straight through the M&T Plaza. If they wanted to get to Main, they could go right by the
So
Citizens Bank.
why does he need that then?
Well, but the thing, we can ask him that, but does that at least cure or help your concern
That
about
would help
people
my
cutting it?
concern and the concern of the rest that signed the petition. That was the biggest concern, was that. And then there was a lot of comments. Everyone wanted to talk a half hour, every house I went to, and about, actually, they thought the buildings were not attractive.
All right. Okay, unless you have anything else, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Jane Dietz. This is my husband, Kenneth Dietz, and we live at 61 Tennyson Terrace. I just want to say that the back end of our property touches the Bliss property. And what we look upon from our backyard is the 2-story townhouses, and behind that is the 4-story apartment buildings, where before this was all a wooded area, nice trees. It's all gone now. A few other things I'd like to talk about is the increased traffic that we're going to have now with more parking and a 5-story apartment buildings. We are going to have a lot of traffic on our little street. Our street doesn't have sidewalks. We don't even have curbs. If you get to the corner of Main and Tennyson Terrace and you want to take a left, good luck. Even now, you may get backed up 2 or 3 cars. As we get into like the Christmas season, it backs up. You cannot take hardly a left out onto Main. So now with all this additional traffic and people coming and going, this is going to be tough. We have school buses, of course, and we also have an abundance of walkers. People like to walk on their lunch hour, and we have people walk in the street because there are no sidewalks. So we're gonna, with all the traffic, people pulling in and out, I'm really concerned. Another thing is the increase of noise and pollution. You're gonna have more traffic, more noise. We already have people test driving cars from all those car dealers on Transit Road. They cut down our street. We have speeders. We have people that are a lot of speeding. Another concern I have is with all this abundance of building and the driveways and everything, what happens when it snows and the snow plowing? Where's the snow going? Are they going to be pushing it back and forth across the street like it was last year, where they pushed it from the Bliss side on across the street? And, you know, it's very hard to come down and take lefts and rights, and there's going to be all this snow in our way. Where's it going? Excuse me. A thing I want to mention too is with all the new tall building being proposed here, before all of the Bliss buildings came into being, the tallest building in our whole nearby area was the M&T Bank building on Transit Road. That's all we had. So it's really changing the look of our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is not the quiet little neighborhood it was.
Thank you very much. Sir, do you have anything to add?
No, well, just all these buildings, it seems like we're being boxed in.
First, I need your name. Name and address.
My name is Ken Dietz, 61 Tennyson Terrace. With all these new buildings, like I said, they're working on the building behind our house, which is right up to our property, and now they got the new one there, and now they're building this, they want this other one. We're just getting boxed in. We had trees and everything there. I don't know where you're gonna get 117 parking spaces, and he wants green spaces. Where is that all gonna be? There's no space up there. There's no room at all up there. I don't get it. I really don't. And as far as that house at 37, are they gonna knock that down? That is coming down. It is coming down. And what are you gonna put in place of that? Okay.
Yeah, if you could address the concerns to him, we'll let Mr. Hopkins
Okay.
address them after.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank-
Hi, I'm Sean Brennan from 43 Caesar Boulevard. I'm behind the building at 6770 and 6790, and watching the new one that's behind M&T grow up in the backyard. It feels like we're being surrounded by cruise ships with beautiful lights on the outside. And as they say, it doesn't protrude into your particular yard, but it does affect you. I've asked them to bring them down at least 10, 15%, sometimes at night, and the light still is there. One thing I would ask, I probably should have called Paul, is to maybe turn them off at like midnight, because it is an awful lot of light to add to a neighborhood that is a neighborhood. They could keep it on the Main Street side, just in the neighborhood, turn off the back ones. There is one light, just to let you know. There's one light that is by the dumpster that bounces off the white on the back of the building that just goes everywhere. To address your issue of the design, and they're beautiful buildings, just to let you know. You guys did a great job. They look beautiful. And they are broken up, and they have texture, and they have depth, and they have changes in materials, and they are pretty. I do question the 5 stories, but change is the only evidence of life, as Evelyn Waugh once said. So change is coming. I'm just waiting for him to knock down the little hotel that's around the corner and put one there too. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other comments from the general public? Seeing none, Mr. Hopkins, you want to address the concerns that were just communicated?
So first of all, in terms of 37 Tennyson, which is the green space parcel, why am I not located here, and the pointer battery has died. That parcel, the house will come down. We'll be having landscaping, and you can see the stormwater management area there. So there will be a house, and then we'll have on the northern side of that a 6-foot fence and high-impact screening. In terms of the connectivity to the project at 6842 Main Street, that's really being done as a convenience. It is important to note that generally speaking, the town has a policy of encouraging connectivity, right? So I just don't foresee how that's going to cause traffic impacts on Tennyson, because there would be no reason to turn right and end up further down on Transit to the north than you otherwise would be if you just simply access through the M&T parcel or use Main Street to get to the signalized intersection of Main and Transit. In terms of sidewalks, we are installing sidewalks along our entire frontage, including Tennyson Terrace. It's a distance of about 400 feet. In terms of where the building is located, the back of that building, which is here, to that property line of the permanent open space parcel with the width of 90 feet is 323 feet, so more than a football field. In terms of the existing project under construction at 6842, and a lot of the comments seem to pertain to that. James, if you go back to one of the aerials that shows the overall. A little more. There we go, the one with, next one, or one behind. There we go. So in terms of the project that's under construction at 6842 Main Street, where people are saying that's close, it's important to note that was designed to have 4-story building, 2-story townhomes, landscaping and screening. That fence, Mr. Bliss indicated, will be installed within 4 weeks. There's been some delays in terms of availability of materials and electric, et cetera, but that is going in, so that screening will be enhanced pursuant to the site plan that was previously approved by this board. And again, while not relevant for this evening, it is important to put that in context. What was approved previously on that site was an industrial building, a warehouse building that had loading docks about 20 feet from the neighbors' backyards. I believe it had been approved, reapproved, and then expired, but the current property owner at that time that Mr. Bliss purchased the site from, that was their intention. We think ultimately what's going to end up there, what's under construction, is highly preferable to what that would have been. Other than that, I think we've addressed the concerns. I do want to also note that Mr. Bliss does have a track record of making an effort to work closely with nearby property owners, so we'll continue to do that. Does it mean we can keep everyone satisfied at all times? No, but he's always willing to meet with people, talk with people, and then again, finally, in terms of the building architecture, I think Dave would say takes great pride in that building, provides a lot of vertical relief, horizontal relief, high-quality materials on all 4 sides. So again, architecture of that building's been very well received. This is not located in one of the town's mixed-use districts, so it does not go in front of the Design Advisory Board. And then in terms of building height, I believe that frontage where the plaza is has been zoned GB, which expressly allows a building height of up to 65 feet since 1976. The back of the site, including those 2 homes, is zoned multifamily, and that means we could put apartment buildings there. There was never any intention to put multifamily or apartment buildings there. So again, given what the zoning classifications of that parcel is, I think we've done a good job to try and minimize any impact this mixed-use redevelopment project will have on the nearby neighborhood. If there's any other questions, obviously, we'd welcome the opportunity to address them.
You didn't address the sidewalks on Tennyson.
Sidewalks on Tennyson, yeah, we're putting sidewalks along our entire frontage.
The connection between both site and 6842, two-way?
Two-way.
And what's the reason for that? Is it so that you're trying to allow traffic from 6842 Main
That-
to Tennyson? Wouldn't that kind of be?
I think it's just for convenience, right? Oh, for shared amenities. For example, in 6842, there may be a community space in a gym, or in this, so that way he doesn't have to provide duplicative space for those amenities in each building.
Then why not one way? So that only your proposed project can enter 6842 and not a flood of people from 6842 to the Tennyson area?
Well, because if you were using those shared amenities and you drove back from 6842, you'd want to be able to get back across the street.
What shared amenities will you be driving?
Paul, what are the amenities you envision would be there?
Yeah. Hi, Paul Bliss, 6790. My office is 6790, by the way. So our plan there was just the connectivity, so we have the amenities. We plan possibly to have a yoga studio we're talking to. We have a gym there as well, and some other amenities at 6812 that all 3 buildings could share. We're not trying to create a problem there. We think it's going to ease some traffic, but really that's the thought. And one other point as well about architecture. 6842 was a complete different design, color schemes, and so forth. So we did break that.
6842, that's on transit, but I was talking about
I understand.
what about the screening along, like, obviously I understand from Sean that you're doing the screening alongside the Tennyson, but it seems like obviously the character of the neighborhood, would the applicant maybe increase the screening that runs along the back parcels on the residents that?
Well, it is the town's most intensive requirement is high-impact screening. It is the high-impact screening.
Right, would you do anything extra so as to keep, I think they were talking about it looked very, very
Well,
much like nature.
Well, again, it's not in yet.
Which property?
Here.
6842?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no,
not.
not 60, I'm talking about your.
Oh, you mean here?
Yeah,
Oh, so yeah, what we're showing there is, again, Paul,
6-foot fence and high impact screening.
in 90 foot of green space.
90 foot of green space, how tall though? Because I think the concern was height, right?
Yeah, but I think the concern that was being raised was about what's under construction at 6842. Yeah, it pertained to 6842. On this particular parcel, again, the ZBA asked for this, the northernmost 90 feet will be permanent green space. There's a deed restriction already recorded, a 6-foot fence, and high-impact landscaping. Yeah, now Paul wants to make sure it's clear. He offered to agree to that, so that was part of the discussions.
Ms. McHugh, did you have another question?
Yes.
I'll allow it.
I just want to address some of the things he says. Okay, he's putting 400 feet of sidewalk in. We're not talking about 400 feet of sidewalk. We're talking of a mile and a half of road, or however long Tennyson Terrace is, that people are walking. They'll walk down to his property, get to the parking lot. They aren't even going to walk on his sidewalk. They're going to turn around and walk back. For 6842, we were talking about the landscaping behind it, which is all gone. Now, it's going to be a 6-foot fence to block a 4-story building? I mean, come on. That doesn't even make sense. For the trees, I saw at the planning, I did visit the planning board, and the trees they showed me, some were evergreen, some were birch, whatever. They're barely going to come above the 6-foot fence. It's going to take 20 years for those to grow. Same thing with the part at 37 Tennyson, and I'm not even sure I want a fence at 37 Tennyson. All that does is mean we're going to look at a fence, and he's going to have trees on his side, which is just what he has at 6842. Okay.
Mr. Hopkins, do you want to respond to that?
Again, with respect to this project, which is what the hearing is this evening, when we first went in front of the ZBA in December, we showed a plan that showed the northernmost parcel, 37 Tennyson, with a width of 90 feet as green space, and we've honored that commitment. You know, and we're putting the town's most intensive screening, the 6-foot fence, and high-intensity landscaping. And again, the landscaping for this project has been reviewed by the town's landscape architect, so we're meeting the landscaping requirements. And you saw, we showed you the landscaping plan. It's pretty extensive landscaping being put on this site, which doesn't have, you know, especially along the Main Street frontage, no vegetation.
Thank you. Ms. McHugh, if you, well, as long as it's not about 6842, because that is not on the agenda for tonight, okay?
No, it's
I'll allow more.
about the curved driveway part, the 2-way curved driveway to get to the amenities that may or may not be there. If they want to get to a gym from that building, they could walk. Put a sidewalk there, not a driveway.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Set? Okay. I'll close the hearing on that. All right, now we're moving on to item number 4. 1790, 1860, and 1920 North French Road and 999 Campbell Boulevard. Request to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plan.
Good evening once again. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant. If we go to the first slide. Oh, your first slide. Remember, I had it. There you go. So this is, we're here this evening in connection with a request to amend the comprehensive plan. In connection with this application, your advisory, ultimately the decision will be made by the town board after a separate public hearing. The site itself today is currently zoned SA. This is the 990 and North French Road. Directly to the east of us is the Cross Point Business Park. Next slide. In terms of the parcels, you can see they're highlighted in yellow there. The overall project site comprises 62 acres. We have approximately 700 feet of frontage on Millersport Highway, but it's important to note it's broken up. Here, and there's a National Grid right-of-way, and then here, parcel at 1920 French. Nearby uses are varied. We have the 990, single-family residential, primarily to the south. To the east, professional offices, warehouse space, industrial space, and this site approved for apartments. Next slide. So this is figure 6 of the comprehensive plan. I'm actually going to show this in more detail in a second. Next slide. is a copy of the concept plan that we presented with this application. What we're showing, and again, this would be a future application in terms of rezoning, is a mixed-use development that would occur on properties that would be zoned SC3, MFR5, and R3. Again, the current zoning is SA. We're showing two-story mixed-use buildings out along North French, 4,000 square feet of first-floor commercial space with 15 apartments each on the first floor and 20 second-story apartments, 86 townhome units here, which would be attached, 55 lots for single-family homes, and then 64 multifamily units. This does involve a very lengthy review process, meaning ultimately if the town board does amend the comprehensive plan and then also does approve a rezoning, this would come back in front of you again in the future in connection with the request for site plan approval and subdivision approval. So we're well aware of the requirements we would have to go through. Next slide. So the planning department has asked you to consider, instead of what it is today, the potential for development of this site for industrial or distribution use. So we did just recently have this concept plan prepared by Carmina Wood Design. I would note the planning department has not had the opportunity to review it. The problem with that is it really did not have a lot of development potential in terms of those uses, and the configuration of the resulting parcels would not be ideal, especially for a larger distribution facility, aka Amazon or one of those uses. It is important to note that when we started down this path during COVID, the supervisor's office and economic development asked us not to move forward so they could consider a possible R&D use, a distribution use. Those results were unsuccessful, but we did wait. We took a look at that, and there was no ability to deliver. I believe it was also looked at by one national senior housing company, which elected to go elsewhere as well. It is important to note the property to the east, directly to the east, is the Cross Point Business Park. As Mr. Marshall indicated during the introductory comments in the work session, we are reserving a right-of-way there, which was required as part of the original approval of Cross Point probably 25 years ago. A portion of the Cross Point Business Park is actually zoned for multifamily or mixed use, and it's designated in Figure 6A as commercial and mixed use, or actually suburban corridor. And again, directly next door. So it's not like we're proposing what we're proposing on a site where that designation is not in close proximity. Next slide. It's a survey of the site. Again, just to point out, it is in irregular shape. We do have some wetland constraints we need to work with, and we don't own this parcel. It's a National Grid corridor. We are showing access across that. We've had discussions with National Grid, but they are not going to allow any buildings, whether they be mixed use, warehouse, distribution, on that parcel. Next slide. Figure 6 of the comprehensive plan. So currently, while the site is privately owned, it's designated primarily in green, recreation, open space, and greenways, in a portion industrial office. I'm not blaming anyone for that. As the planning department indicated, at the time the comprehensive plan was prepared, they looked at the wetland maps, not the specific wetland maps, but largely based on aerial photography, and indicated this site was largely wetlands, which while it has wetlands, it's not largely wetlands, hence the green and orange designation today. Next slide. Figure 6A of the comprehensive plan, again, just to note that directly next door at Cross Point, we actually have that mixed-use designation. It's also important to note that if there was that strong of demand for commercial, industrial, warehouse space, Cross Point has the land next door. But what they've chosen to do instead was rezone a portion of their site to allow apartments. Those apartments have not yet been constructed, but it does indicate that in this particular area, there's not a strong demand for that type of use. The other problem is we can't just simply allow this parcel to sit around for a possible future use of warehouse or distribution, because what would happen over time is the wetlands would expand, and ultimately we'd wind up with no site or no development being able to occur on this site. Next slide. Aerial photograph, that's that area that was rezoned for mixed use by the town board, I believe in 2022. And you can see the project site here, bordering on the 990 with that narrow frontage in close proximity to the 990. Next slide. It is important to note the planning department did provide you with a detailed memorandum explaining its reasoning in terms of why they believe it's more appropriate for industrial office use. I would indicate we've taken a look at that. We have not had a chance yet to respond in detail. we will do so. I believe this board deserves a response, and I believe the planning department, that obviously did spend a lot of time taking a look at this, deserves that response as well. But I do want to note, if there was demand for industrial, demand for warehouse, we would gladly accommodate that. It's a big site. It would be a welcome opportunity. It's simply not there. And again, the efforts were made to market it for that purpose. Next slide. That's just a continuation of that memorandum that had 6 bullet points. I would note that just as is the case in elsewhere in the town of Amherst, there continues to be very strong demand for what I call non-traditional forms of housing, housing in mixed-use buildings, attached townhomes, et cetera. We simply do not have enough of those units in the town of Amherst or elsewhere to accommodate empty nesters, seniors, people that want to travel back and forth between Buffalo in the summer and a warmer climate in the winter. Our predominant housing type continues to be single-family homes, and as we're all very well aware, the price of single-family homes generally has been cost prohibitive to younger families, younger professionals. That's an unfortunate situation that's not unique to Western New York, but this site would now accommodate a mixture of housing types. So with all that being said, what we're asking you to do this evening in connection with this one as well is leave the hearing open, give us a chance to address the comments that we've received. We'll come back in front of you next month, and ultimately, again, the town board will have to hold a public hearing and issue a decision on both the comp plan application, and if that is approved, a future rezoning decision. It would then come back in front of you for site plan approval and the 3-step subdivision approval process. If there's any questions, I would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Brittany?
Did the applicant review the limited industrial space remaining in the town?
Yeah, we're aware of the limited industrial space, and again, the effort was made to market it. I worked on a project that actually received site plan approval from this board in, I believe, June of last year, May of last year, for a new warehouse on Lawrence Bell. They still, and it's a national housing company that develops warehouses, they still have not found a user. Part of the reason for that, in my opinion, is in Amherst, property is worth more than it is, for example, River Road in Tonawanda. So it's just, Amherst.
Still hold a commodity. Your applicant is one of the few industrial spaces left in the town.
Well, but if you look at that plan that we prepared, it's just with the wetland constraints and the configuration of the parcel, it's just simply not an ideal industrial warehouse site. I want to note, like, if you can find one of those big users, I mean, it's a home run economically. You build the building, they sign a 30-year lease, they pay the insurance, they pay the taxes. I mean, it's not like, but I'm just saying any of those larger users, those are good projects for developers, but the demand has to exist.
Maybe one day. Now you bring up too the need for, I think, apartments too.
Mm-hmm.
In the area, but then you also just said Cross Point has obviously the zoning for apartments.
They do.
And yet they haven't built it, so it doesn't seem like there's an extreme need. You would agree?
No, there is extreme demand for
But
apartments.
Cross Point's not building.
Yeah, I can't speak for why Uniland hasn't proceeded with their project. It may be the interest rates and increased capital requirements, but there's strong demand not only in Amherst, but everywhere in Western New York for non-traditional forms of housing.
But you would agree there's land right there for it to be built.
Well, not that my
Just
client,
not by your applicant.
right, not that my client owns, yes, yes, absolutely.
Barb, any questions?
No questions.
Joe?
No questions.
Carrie? I have no questions. Is there anybody from the general public who wishes to ask a question or address anything? Nothing? Okay. I won't close the hearing. We'll take a vote on that, but that is the last item. So, the hearings for today are closed. Wherever you guys want. Okay. Everybody ready? Oh, wait, let me get my conditions out. All right, item number 1, 2495 Worley Drive. First, we have seeker. Do I have a proposal? Motion? Carrie seconds. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Vaughn? Yes. Conversely? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
5-0 approved. And with regard to the site plan, we have conditions. Do I hear a motion with conditions? Or do you want to read off the conditions? Yeah, let's read the conditions.
Consideration of signs is specifically excluded from this approval. Dumpsters, trash containers, all mechanical equipment, etc. Dumpsters, refuse containers are screened. As-built record drawings are provided to the engineering department prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy by the building department. That the conditions of the engineering department engineering services division letter dated February 12, 2024 are addressed to the satisfaction of that division. That the requirements of zoning enforcement officer, planning department, and town's landscape architect as stipulated in the planning department letter dated May 3rd are addressed to the satisfaction of the officer, department, and landscape architect. That the concerns raised in the stormwater management officer letter dated May 16th, 2024 are addressed to the satisfaction of that officer. And that the concerns raised in the Amherst Fire Chiefs Association letter dated May 16th, 2024 are addressed to the satisfaction of the association.
Okay. Does everybody understand the conditions? Does anybody have any questions about the conditions? Is there anybody who wants to have any discussion about any of the issues present here before we take a vote on the site plan? Okay. All right, do I hear a motion on this? Motion to approve with conditions, do we hear a second?
Second?
Joe is seconded, roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Vaughn? Yes. Conversely? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
It's 5-0, and that passes as well. Okay, moving on to item number 2, which is 4300 Millersport Highway. We did have a request from Mr. Hopkins to hold this open for further testimony for another day. Do I hear a motion in that regard? We have a motion to hold the public hearing open. Do I hear a second? Carrie seconds. Roll call, please. Yes.
Yes.
Vaughn? Yes. Conversely? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
We need to do separate votes on seeker and on the site plan. Okay, but that makes sense. Just procedural speaking. Okay, item number 3, 6812, 6814, 6832 Main Street, 29 and 37 Tennyson Terrace. We have conditions on that.
Yes. One, that the petitioner provide an address plan with apartment numbers for the development to the town that satisfies the requirements of the revised Fire Chiefs Association letter dated May 15th, 2024. That the petitioner address the comments in the engineering department, engineering services division letter dated May 7th, 2024 to the satisfaction of that department. That the petitioner address the comments in the engineering department sanitary division letter dated May 10th, 2024 to the satisfaction of that department. That the petitioner explore lengthening the parking lot bump out area in the spaces closest to the Tennyson Terrace between the two drives that satisfies the requirements of the Traffic Safety Board letter dated May 7th, 2024. That the petitioner address the comments of the zoning enforcement officer and planning department listed in the planning department letter dated May 7th, 2024 to the satisfaction of that officer and the department. That the subject parcels be merged prior to the issuance of an approved site plan by the planning department that satisfies the town assessor's letter dated April 4th, 2024. and that the petitioner or his representatives obtain any required permits from the New York State DOT for any work within the Main Street right-of-way that satisfies the email dated April 26, 2024.
First, seeker determination on this. Do I have a motion with regard to seeker? Okay. I feel like I don't. Is there anyone else who wants to discuss the connection?
I'm in favor for fire department access.
My opinion on that, I think the concerns that people from either of the properties, the one being built or the one that's being proposed, are going to come out and make a right-hand turn onto Tennyson, I just don't think they're believable. In fact, I think even the people in the new project are going to be cutting over to get to transit, or possibly even Maine. I don't have a concern with it, but anyone else wants to have any discussions with it? And Joe, your point's well taken.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, discussion had, thank you. Seeker determination, do I have anyone move to approve?
Motion to approve?
Okay, motion is approved, motion to approve seeker by Joe, seconded by Carrie. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Conversely?
Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
5-0 passes. Okay, and with regard to the site plan, we've already heard the conditions. Does everyone understand the conditions? Does anyone wants to discuss the conditions or ask any questions regarding the conditions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve with conditions? Harb moved to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Joe seconds it. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Conversely? Yes.
Yes.
5-0 passes. Finally, on item number 4, 1790, 1860, 1920 North French Road, 999 Campbell Boulevard. There is a request for Mr. Hawkins to hold this open. Okay, we have a motion to deny and not recommend to the town board. Is there anyone that seconds that?
I'll second that.
Harb is seconded. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Conversely?
Yes.
Raphael?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. That is a denial of the recommendation of the town board, so everyone understands what that is. And has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from April? Okay, we have a motion from Brittany to approve the minutes. We'll hear a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Conversely? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
5-0 to approve the minutes. Do I hear a motion to adjourn to next month? Okay, anyone want to second that?
Second?
Joe seconds it. Roll call, please.
Shamil?
Yes.
Gill?
Yes.
Tom? Yes. Conversely? Yes. Raphael?
Yes.
There we go. 5-0, we're done.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
But here's the question we need to decide. At some point, it's almost inevitable, I'm gonna miss a meeting, okay? We need to, well, I'm not perfect, it could happen.
We'll just have to cancel the meeting.
Well, if you think I'm indispensable, fine, but I don't. Well, I do not second that, unfortunately. No, we've, in the past, if you remember, in times where Mr. Gilmore missed, we had Dale there. We can certainly ask him if he would like to continue that, but I would caution everybody that his term is nearly up. I don't know if he's coming back or not. So is there anyone else interested in a backup position in case? The reason we're asking this now is because I was on trial until yesterday. I didn't get a verdict until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And If it had still been going on, I don't know if I probably wouldn't be here today. But it resolved just in time. So if there's anyone interested, we don't have to make a decision now. Think about it.
I nominate Herb so we can have a free, I'll see commentary.
Harvey is the calmest of the group, yes.
Well, we've got a motion for Herb. Anyone want to second that? It's been seconded. Now, we can't force you to do it, Herb. You and, my understanding is you and, after Dal anyways, you, out of the rest of you, you and guys are tied for the most seniority here. Because it was told to me, I didn't remember this, but you guys were apparently brought aboard at the same day.
Harb and I?
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We're in it for life.
All right.
I mean, it's something to set our way.
Okay, well, so there we go. We all have, Harb is the backup in case something happens to me. He's a